about potential scenarios involving China and Taiwan, and what factors do you think are critical for China to contemplate an invasion of Taiwan? And maybe if you can also reflect on how the US would respond should an invasion of Taiwan take place. And we've been hearing, again, increasing noise around this over the last few weeks, more so than usual.
Well, I think the direct lessons that China is taking from the Ukraine war are changing constantly. Initially, China was shocked by Russia's military failure and the very strict international sanctions from the Western countries that might crash a Russia economy. I think those undermined China's confidence in its own potential military operation against Taiwan. But China was also reminded about the importance of a massive and decisive initial military attack if China needs to attack Taiwan. Later, I think, as Timo just mentioned, the Russian economy was, doing okay. Global South countries wanted to maintain neutral. Russia actually made some military progress on the battlefield. So the Chinese initial pessimistic assessment becomes less so. And now it again is different because now it is entering a long war of attrition from the perspective of many Chinese military strategists. And then to them, a long war of attrition favors the country that has a much greater comprehensive national power. And to China, in a war between Taiwan and the mainland, China is, of course, the one that possesses absolute advantage in comprehensive national power. So that's, something really favorable to China if a Taiwan conflict becomes also a long and prolonged, a war between the two sides, with neither side able to, secure immediate and decisive victory. But that long war of attrition also, in some sense, provides necessary time for the international community to gradually adjust to a new territorial reality. So that's something that I think China also views positively. So I'm afraid the lessons are changing, and the recent lessons that China is taking are not necessarily good news when it comes to Taiwan. But generally speaking, the future military, the future potential of a conflict over Taiwan is very much decided by Mr. Xi's political will. His political will to leave a legacy on Chinese history has been the main driver of the rising tensions across the Taiwan Strait. And going forward, there is no real sign of declining political will on the part of Xi Jinping. Some people even argue that for Xi to justify his maintaining in power in the long run, he probably needs to show progress on the issue of national unification, especially when he fails to deliver other performances, including economic performances. On the other hand, I wanted to add that I think Xi's thinking is also shaped, again, by his perception of the balance of power internationally. His growing ambition on Taiwan was supported by his assessment of West is declining, East is rising. But now, I think the unprecedented economic challenges that would undermine China's future growth of comprehensive national power, including military power, will make it much harder for Beijing to contemplate major military move. And the conventional military power balance in the Asia-Pacific region between US and China used to be on the Chinese side, and China, was able to narrow the military power gap and even surpass the United States in certain areas, but that trend may be stopped or even reversed if the U.S. administration is able to further invest in the Asia-Pacific region and revitalize its military alliance in the region. So this changing balance of power is the most decisive factor for China, and as a result, I think the risk of a near-term military conflict over Taiwan is modestly lower now than before. So I think there is less urgency for the U.S. to discuss how to respond to that. But I think, of course, the greatest uncertainty is what Trump will do if he comes into power. There is, he made some, indications a few days ago that Taiwan is not a critical interest to him. And again, he raises, at least his remarks made Beijing be aware again of the possibility of some transactional deal between U.S. and China on Taiwan. That's some reason why Beijing might look favorably towards a future Trump administration. But his overall hostile approach towards China also make Beijing hesitate. So overall, I think the risk is not as high as before. The real challenge, of course, is if Beijing is increasingly convinced that its relative balance of power can no longer be maintained, will Beijing feel a sense of urgency to take action in the near-term future? I think that's a theoretical risk. So far, we don't see Mr. Xi as a person that wants to be really risk-taking as Mr. Putin is.
Thank you, Tong. At least a glimmer of good news for the next, at least until next November. We can say that that's one conflict that hopefully will not be showing up. Ashley, let me turn back to you since we're talking about the Asia Pacific as well. But India has been an active participant in the Quad Alliance along the United States, Japan, and Australia. You've written in a foreign affairs piece last year that New Delhi will not side with the US against China, calling this a bad bet. So how do you assess the strategic importance of the Quad in shaping the Indo-Pacific region? And what role